Another Thursday for us to discuss on how to better take care of our health. Health matters. That is what we are going to be looking at in today's edition of the program, Your Health, aired on Equinoxe Radio Multimedia. For presentation, I am Immaculate Fogwe. A stroke can be a serious and frightening medical emergency that has huge impact on stroke patients and those around them. In order to properly handle the aftermath of a stroke, it is important to be informed. Knowing about your strokes and how to recover from them is a key step to fighting any fear, and that's what we're looking at in today's edition of the program. With me here, we have AC Lucy. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Immaculate Fogwe. Good afternoon, dear listeners and televiewers of Equinoxe Radio and Television.
Exactly. AC Lucy will be my co-host, and I will call we having as guest Dr. Gams Masi. It is a pleasure having you on the program today.
Thank you, Immaculate. Thank you, Lucy. I'm always happy to be here in Equinoxe.
Dr. Gams Nasi is a neurologist and equally an epileptologist. Good. Once more, we are happy to have you on the program. Today, we'll be looking at stroke. So, in a common term, how can we define stroke?
Simply, a stroke is an accident, is a sudden onset of focal neurological sign related to brain injury. And that brain injury is caused by either a blood shortage in the brain, which is called ischemic stroke, or a burst of a blood vessels in the brain, which is called hemorrhagic stroke.
So what can cause all what you just mentioned?
Stroke can be preventable in 80 to 90% of cases. Okay, there are different types of causes of stroke depending on ischemic and hemorrhagic stroke. But what is important to understand is that stroke are easily related to hypertension, diabetes, obesity and overweight, sedentary lifestyle, smoking, chronic alcoholism, and inappropriate diet, like diet rich or with salt, with sodium.
Okay, doctor. So how can one tell he or she is suffering from stroke?
So the diagnosis of stroke is generally easy to make. It's a patient that will come with a paralysis of a part of the body, a sudden loss of speech, a sudden blurred vision, a sudden loss of consciousness, or convulsions. All the characteristic of symptom of stroke is that they occur suddenly. When you have a symptoms occurring suddenly and the symptom is related to a brain lesion, the first diagnosis is a stroke. So when you have this kind of sign, you have to rush to a health facilities, especially because every minute a stroke patient will lose 4 million of brain cells. That means if you don't take care of the patient as rapid as possible, we'll probably lose the patient, or the patient will keep major sequelae.
And who is more likely to suffer from stroke? Like, who is likely to suffer from stroke? Is it hereditary? Are there some factors?
Okay, the major factor are the one that I mentioned before: hypertension, diabetes, obesity, smoking, chronic alcoholism, sedentary lifestyle, and inappropriate diet. But all people, from the fetus to the elder people, can suffer from stroke. The prevalence of stroke is more important in elder people of more than 65 years old, but about 22% of stroke can occur in young adults of less than 45 years old.
Now, let's look at the different types of stroke. How many types exist, and are the manifestations the same?
The two main types of stroke are ischemic, as I told you, when there is a shortage of blood, a blood vessel has been obstructed, and there is no more, the blood is no more available for the brain cells, and they die. This is an ischemic stroke. The second type of stroke is the burst of a blood vessels. So you will find blood in the brain. It is an hemorrhagic stroke. And the most frequent type of stroke is the ischemic stroke, with 80% of cases in the world, but in our setting, it represents 55 to 60% of cases, with hemorrhagic stroke representing 40 to 45% of stroke type.
And can this stroke be diagnosed? Can it be diagnosed in the hospital, or how can we diagnose a stroke?
The clinical manifestation of stroke are similar. So only by clinical sign you cannot differentiate ischemic or hemorrhagic stroke. That's why to have the proper diagnosis of this type of stroke, we have to do a brain imaging. The most available one is the brain CT scan, but when it is possible, you can also do a brain MRI, which is more sensitive than the brain CT scan. But of course, with a brain CT scan, we can diagnose the major type of stroke.
And talking about stroke, we know we are in Cameroon. What is the possibility, like how many % of people suffer from stroke in our country?
Till now, we don't have a community-based study to easily give the figure, but stroke represents the first cause of hospitalization in internal medicine department and in neurology department. It represents 30% of all neurological cases received in hospital for hospitalization. And stroke is the major cause of mortality in hospitalization, with about 1 patient out of 3 will die.
Can you call out our numbers? I think our technicians will soon display the numbers which you can participate on today's edition program. As far as stroke is concerned, you can ask any question. I guess our technician will soon display those numbers. Asa Lucy very soon will be calling out those numbers when they'll be displayed. So back to you, doctor. Now, you talked about 30%. Definitely means there is a rise in case of stroke. What accounts for this rise as far as the Cameroon context is concerned?
Okay, in our searching, the first reason for the increasing of stroke is the life expectancy. As we are getting more older, we increase the risk of stroke. The second main reason is the epidemiological transition. We change our habit, we change the type of food we used to take with the increased use of fast food, the increased use of smoking, the increased alcoholism or alcohol intake in the population, especially in the young population, explain the rise in the incidence of stroke. And in Cameroon, about from 2009 to 2015, we observe a 10% increase in the incidence of stroke. So this is a huge problem. And if nothing is done in the next year, about 1 adult out of 4 will have a stroke.
Wow. Lucy,
Okay.
I guess the numbers have been displayed.
Yeah, our numbers are there. You can join us through 670-547049 or 656-622222. I read again, 670-547049 and 656-622222. 22 at the end.
Other instructions.
And also, you want to join us and your radio, your TV set is on. It's good for you to switch it off so that we are not going to have any complaint or disturbance while we try to wish each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, doctor, is there a possibility of treating a stroke?
Yes, a stroke is a treatable condition, especially if the patient is received as early as possible. Okay, during the first hour from the onset of symptoms. A stroke can be treatable, especially in a health facility where you have a stroke unit, but in Cameroon we have very few stroke units. The only functional stroke unit in Cameroon is located in the Douala General Hospital, so for close to 28 million of people is not enough. It's not enough.
It's really small.
And if there is no stroke unit, you have to manage your patient in a neurological unit. And if you don't have it, you manage your patient in internal medicine department. But as you are far from the stroke unit, the prognosis of the patient is becoming poor. A patient who is managed in a stroke unit will have a better outcome than a patient who is managed out of the stroke unit.
And how long does one take to treat stroke? How is the treatment method?
Depending on the type and the severity of stroke, we have many treatment. Okay, the first treatment is to try to stabilize the patient. The second treatment is to try to improve the function. Like if he has a paralysis, we have to improve the paralysis. If he lost his speech, we have to try to improve the speech. And the third treatment option is to prevent the recurrence. Is the main one that we use in our setting when we receive patient with stroke, is to prevent the occurrence of another stroke, because a second stroke is usually worse with higher mortality than the first stroke.
Yes, doctor, how long is the treating mode? How long, the period, the length?
It's all the life. It's the whole life.
Wow.
Okay? It's the whole life. And what is also important for people to know is that treating a stroke is very expensive. Study done in Lakentini Hospital and in Douala General Hospital found that only for hospitalization, the patient will spend 400 to 800,000 during the hospitalization, and we don't count after the hospitalization the physiotherapy session, the speech therapy session, the medication, the consultation fees, the taxi fees to come to the hospital, etc. So it's a very expensive disease. That's why the key word should be the prevention.
So is there a cure for stroke?
Yeah, there are many cures for stroke.
As in, can the person who has suffered from a stroke come back to normal?
Yes, can a patient with the outcome of stroke patient are 1/3 of patient will die, 1/3 of patient will keep major sequelae and will remain dependent of other people, but you have 1/3 of patient that will keep minor sequelae or no sequelae at all. So there are some patients that are stroke survivors with minor or no sequelae. It's possible, but it depends on the severity of stroke, on the delay of the management of stroke, on the age of the patient, and also on the quality of the management.
Are there any diets? Is there any diets, like when you suffer from stroke? Are there some food restrictions that you have to follow?
Yes, after a stroke, you change your habit. You should change your habit. For the diet, you have to reduce the salt intake, reduce sweet intake or sugar intake, reduce fat intake, and even reduce red meat intake, like cow meat, etc.
Okay, and now what are some of the activities stroke patients are not supposed to do? Can they carry out physical exercise?
Yes, it is even advised for them to do physical exercise, but depending on their sequelae, on their handicap. If they can perform normal physical activity like sport, trekking, etc., they can do it. But depending on the severity of handicap, they have some activity they have to do. But it is advisable to perform physical activity when you have a stroke.
Is there any similarity between epilepsy and stroke?
No, some similarities for some of the risk factors. For example, hypertension is also a risk factor for epilepsy in adult population. Diabetes is a risk factor of epilepsy in adult population. But stroke is one of the major causes of epilepsy in adult population. About 16% of stroke patients will have a post-stroke epilepsy.
And doctor, when we carry out activities, we know that we cannot have stroke, like we know we are sportives or something like that, but we find out that some people who are sportives still have stroke. What accounts for this? Yeah,
I told you that you have many risk factors for stroke, okay, including the one which are preventable, but you have also genetic risk factors, okay. We cannot prevent genetic risk factor. We have it in our genes, and it may expose us to any disease, to a stroke, okay.
So now, doctor, in case, let's say, a colleague of mine, a family member falls down due to a stroke, what should be my first reaction?
The first reaction is to bring your patient to hospital. Don't put needle on the finger. There is no need.
Doctor, let's say like in the far north region where the hospitals are very far, kilometers away, and you're trying to save that person before bringing that person to the hospital. I guess there's some things I need to apply, some first aid.
Yeah, if the patient is convulsing, you place him on the lateral position, security lateral position, but otherwise you cannot do anything. You have to rush to the hospital. For stroke, no way to manage at home, rush to the hospital.
Thank you so much.
Even the management is a small healthcare facility is better than stay at home.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much, Lucy.
It's a pleasure always being here.
And that was Dr. Gams Marcy. He's a neurologist right here in the city of Douala. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for your keen attention. For presentation, I am Immaculate Fogwe, and I received technical assistance from Bertrand Bonzini. Have a lovely day in the company of more interesting programs on Equinoxe Radio and, of course, television. So long.
Equinoxe Télévision, au-delà de l'image, nous rendons compte. Ce samedi